They said I ruined Christmas, but when I handed them that envelope, their faces turned white. And suddenly, I wasn't the villain anymore. Before we unravel what was inside that envelope, drop a comment below telling me the most shocking family moment you've witnessed. Hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that turn betrayal into poetic justice. The fireplace crackled behind me, its warmth doing little to melt the cold silence that had settled over the table. It was supposed to be a celebration. Christmas Eve, family, laughter. But something was different this year. I could feel it, like the air itself had turned brittle. I had carved the ham, poured the wine, even pulled out the old Christmas records my late wife adored. But their smiles were thin, forced, eyes darting like they were waiting for a cue. And then it came. Evan, my oldest, leaned back in his chair and cleared his throat. Dad, we've talked, and we've made a decision. I looked up from my plate, fork still midair. The others, Lisa, Matt, even quiet little Aaron, avoided my gaze. We don't think it's right for you to be in control of the estate anymore. My chest tightened, not from the words, but from how rehearsed they sounded. Like this wasn't a conversation. It was a verdict. You're forgetting things, Dad, Evan continued. Bills, dates. Your last email to the lawyer was completely incoherent. Lisa chimed in with that sympathetic voice that always felt more condescending than kind. We love you, but we think it's time you stepped down. My hand trembled slightly on the wine glass, but I didn't speak. Not yet. I watched them, studied them. My children, the ones I'd built everything for, were staging a quiet coup. Then Matt dropped the final blow. We've already spoken to the family attorney. Papers are being drawn. It's for your own good. For my own good. I excused myself from the table without a word. My heart didn't pound. It burned, slow and deep, like coals under ash. I walked to the den, closed the door behind me, and opened the locked drawer in my desk. Inside, an envelope, already prepared. Not because I expected this exact moment, but because I knew, one day, they would forget who made them powerful. And I was ready. The next morning, the Christmas tree still sparkled like nothing had happened. Lights blinking, gifts untouched. But something inside me had shifted. They thought I was weak, old, confused. That was their first mistake. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, watching the frost form on the window, and listening. They were still upstairs, whispering, planning, scheming. I could hear Lisa's voice through the vent above the stove. Do you think he's going to fight it? He won't. He's too proud, Evan said. And honestly, he should be thanking us. We're protecting his legacy before he ruins it. Protecting my legacy? I nearly laughed, but kept quiet. Because now I knew. This wasn't just about concern. This was about control and money. They'd already contacted the attorney, my attorney, the man I trusted with everything, or so I thought. I made a mental note to call him later, from a different number. I needed to see who was still loyal and who had already chosen their side. The envelope I had hidden wasn't just some reactionary move. It was years in the making. I'd seen the signs, the way they'd started treating me like I was fading, forgetting my birthday, leaving me out of decisions. Even during my last health scare, they didn't visit. Just texts. Short ones. I had paid for their schools, bought their first cars, put down payments on their homes. And yet, when they looked at me now, they saw nothing but a stepping stone. Fine. Let them think I was a relic from another time. Let them underestimate me. Because while they whispered and plotted, I was already 10 steps ahead. I still had access to everything they didn't know about. Offshore accounts, legal trusts, and a secondary will. One even my lawyer didn't know existed. But the most powerful weapon? The truth. Because while they painted me as incompetent, I had documented every move, every betrayal, every transaction they thought I didn't notice. and I was about to use it all. I called Charles, my attorney for over 2 decades, from a burner phone I hadn't used in years. He picked up on the second ring. His tone was flat, formal, like he was reading from a script. "Mr. Whitaker, I was expecting your call. Not Henry, not the man he'd shared drinks with after court victories. Just Mr. Whitaker." That was all I needed to hear. I asked him about the power of attorney documents. I wanted to hear it from his own mouth. "They were filed last week," he said, "signed and notarized." My blood ran cold. I never signed anything. "Who brought them in?" I asked, voice calm. He hesitated, then said, "Your son and daughter." Lisa said, "You asked her to handle it, since you'd been under stress lately." There it was, the lie, spoken so casually, so smoothly. He was in on it. Or maybe he was just playing both sides. Either way, I knew I couldn't trust him. I ended the call politely, told him I appreciated the update. But when I hung up, I sat there in the silence, staring at the family photo on the wall. Lisa had been smiling in that picture. Just a year ago, Evan had his arm around her, and my wife, God rest her soul, had been glowing beside me. Now, it all felt like a setup, a carefully orchestrated campaign to take everything I'd built and bury me in silence. They thought they could isolate me, cut me off from my resources, paint me as senile, but they didn't know that I had recorded every interaction, every conversation, every document scanned and backed up to a secure server. They didn't know that my real will, the one that actually mattered, was locked away in a place they couldn't touch. And they definitely didn't know I had started writing. Everything. This was no longer about the money. This was about respect, about dignity, about making sure the last chapter of my life was written by me, not edited by 2 entitled children who forgot who built the world they now stood on. Lisa came by the next morning, fake cheerful, holding a tin of holiday cookies like it was some peace offering. She didn't know I'd already seen the forged power of attorney. She didn't know I had printed every bank statement she thought I couldn't access. I invited her in. She walked through the house like she already owned it, like the furniture was hers to replace, and the paintings were just placeholders for whatever she wanted to hang instead. We sat in the living room. The fireplace was on, but the air felt cold. She started with small talk: weather, Christmas decorations, how Evan was busy with his startup. I just listened, silent, unreadable. Then, with the calmest voice I could muster, I asked, "Lisa, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" She blinked, caught off guard. That wasn't the question she expected. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Just wondering," I said. "You've made some bold moves lately. I figured you must have a long-term plan." She shifted in her seat. The confidence in her posture cracked just slightly. "Dad, I'm just trying to help. You've been through a lot." I leaned forward, slowly. "That's interesting. Because Charles said you filed legal authority over my estate, without my consent. That's not something people do, when they're just trying to help." Her smile froze. I let the silence stretch, just long enough to feel like a noose tightening. "You know what I see in 5 years, Lisa?" She didn't answer. I see 2 kids scrambling to explain themselves to a judge, wondering how the man they thought they could erase somehow flipped the entire narrative. That's when her hand trembled. She picked up her phone, muttered something about needing to go. I stood as she left, didn't walk her to the door. She didn't say goodbye. I watched through the window as she got into her car, her fingers tapping nervously against the steering wheel before she pulled away. I knew right then. They were scared, and I had just begun. Evan always believed he was the smart one, the one with the degree, the startup, the carefully curated image of success. But arrogance has a smell, a stench you recognize once you've been betrayed enough times. That night, after Lisa's visit, I sat down at my desk with a bottle of scotch I hadn't touched in years, and opened every document I'd collected. Bank logs, digital footprints, old emails I'd never deleted. And then, I found it. A transfer I hadn't authorized dated 6 months ago. A significant amount. Just under the reporting threshold. Too precise to be accidental. The account name hit me like a slap. Marjorie Trust Fund. Care discretionary. Marjorie. My late wife. They'd used her memory as cover for theft. I stared at the screen. My pulse slow, but heavy. This wasn't just money. This was desecration. Using credentials I never should have saved on paper, I logged in. The trail led to a shell company. One Evan had created during his MBA days. Supposedly for a side business. It had sat dormant for years. Until it suddenly came alive last year. Right around the time I started getting sicker. The deposits? All from my estate. Withdrawals? Crypto exchanges. Travel bookings. Luxury payments to vendors I didn't recognize. And then came the final clue. A payment to a high-end senior living consultant. $25,000 wired out with the note. Finalize relocation. No family contact. That's when it all made sense. They hadn't just wanted my house or assets. They wanted me gone, hidden away, disconnected, powerless. I leaned back in my chair, the leather groaning under me. My hands were steady now, cold, but steady. They underestimated the wrong man. And the best part? I hadn't even started playing my hand yet. I walked into Martin's office with a thumb drive and no expression. He'd been our family attorney for over 20 years, had watched my kids grow up, knew Marjorie before the cancer, and had always considered Evan a golden boy. But Martin was a man of principle, and I was about to test just how far those principles stretched. I slid the drive across his desk, slow and silent. He raised a brow, chuckled, thinking it was just old tax paperwork. Then he opened the first folder. Bank transfers, shell corporations, trust fund manipulations. He froze, mid-sip of his coffee. The mug slipped from his hand, hit the desk with a wet thud, hot liquid bleeding into stacks of neatly clipped contracts. His eyes scanned the screen faster now. I could see the sweat building on his brow. By the time he hit the memo titled No Family Contact, Finalize Relocation, his mouth parted like he wanted to say something, but couldn't. Finally, he looked at me. This is felony-level fraud. James, your son, your children, they're in deep. I nodded, calm, like we were discussing weather forecasts. He leaned forward, voice lower. Do you want to go to the police? Or do you want to handle it another way? I smiled, not out of joy, but out of clarity. I'd been waiting for that moment for months. I had no interest in lawsuits. I wanted understanding. I wanted confrontation. I wanted them to look me in the eye while I took everything back. I gave Martin instructions. Simple ones. Draft a document transferring power of attorney back to me. Revoke every access point they had to my estate, my home, and my finances. And then I asked him to deliver the final blow. He looked at me surprised, almost afraid. James, are you sure? I just nodded. Let's make this a Christmas they'll never forget. Christmas Eve arrived, draped in artificial cheer. Lights blinked. The fireplace crackled. A roast filled the air with warmth. But the silence around the table was sharper than any knife. They showed up one by one. Evan first, with that smug half-smile and expensive coat, probably paid with my diverted funds. Emily followed, barely hiding her annoyance, eyes glued to her phone. Then the others. Cold hugs, fake greetings, the occasional glance that said, "Why are we still doing this?" I sat at the head of the table, the same place I'd occupied for decades. But tonight, I wasn't their father. I was their reckoning. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. No one asked how I'd been. No one brought a gift, not even a card. It wasn't until dessert that I cleared my throat and slid the silver tray to the center of the table. Atop it, a single envelope. Evan laughed, nervously. "What's this, Dad? Another one of your lectures?" No one moved. No one breathed. I just nodded toward the envelope. "Go on. Open it." He reached across, ripped it open with theatrical boredom, until he saw what was inside. His face turned ash white. Inside were copies of every transaction, every manipulation, every lie. Martin's signature at the bottom of the legal revocations. Access terminated. Accounts locked. Assets frozen. And then, the last page. A new will. None of their names appeared on it. Evan dropped the papers like they burned. Emily snatched them up, eyes scanning faster, then slower, then filled with panic. You can't do this. I stood slowly. The room spun with emotion, but my voice was steady. I did. Years of loyalty, erased by a moment of greed. I trusted you all, and you sold me for convenience. No one spoke, no one argued, just stunned silence and the eerie sound of a candy cane slipping from Emily's trembling hand onto the floor. Then came the screams. Accusations flew. Chairs scraped back. Evan shouted something about suing. Emily cried. One stormed out. Another begged. But I didn't flinch. They disowned me over a lie. Now, I returned the favor with truth. As the chaos simmered, I sat back down, calmly. No shouting, no gloating. I just watched. The house I had built, not brick by brick, but with trust, tradition. Love had collapsed in the time it took them to read a letter. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Evan had stormed out. Emily was pacing, her mascara streaked. One of the twins sat frozen, eyes wide in disbelief. And then, I pulled out a second envelope. This one was smaller, thicker. I tapped the table softly. Once, twice. They stopped. I held it up and said, "This one's not for all of you." Emily lunged for it, but I pulled it back. It's for one person, the only one who called to check on me after everything, the only one who didn't play a part in the lies. The room tensed. I turned to my youngest Claire, the quiet one. The one they always talked over. She sat, stunned, blinking rapidly. I handed it to her. "Open it. When you're ready." She hesitated, then slowly peeled it open and gasped. Inside were the original property deeds, the untouched trust account, and a handwritten letter from me. It outlined every legal transfer, everything I'd protected, everything still in my name, and now in hers. Claire looked up at me, tears forming. Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak. I smiled. You were the only one who remembered who I was. Before the money, before the betrayal. That's why you're the only one who still has a father. The others stood in stunned silence. Evan came back into the room just in time to see it. And when he tried to lunge for the documents, Claire stood up. "Don't." Her voice was steady, firm. For the first time ever, they listened to her. Silence hung in the air like fog, thick, suffocating, unavoidable. Claire clutched the envelope like it was her anchor. The others just stared, stunned into stillness. The kind that only comes after you realize the story you've told yourself was a lie, and everyone knows it. I stood up, not slowly or dramatically, just with purpose. You wanted me out of your lives. Well, this time, it's on my terms. Evan sputtered something about forgiveness, about misunderstanding. Emily started crying again, loud and rehearsed. One of the twins tried to mumble an apology, but I didn't even flinch. I walked to the door, coat in hand, and paused. "Claire, I'll leave the lawyer's contact with you. Everything's already transferred. They can't touch a cent." She nodded, tears silently streaming. Evan lunged again, this time for an emotional last word. A plea, a performance. I don't know. I didn't listen. I turned to face them one last time. For years, I broke my back to give you comfort, only to watch you weaponize it against me. You didn't want a father. You wanted a wallet. Now you have neither. And then I left. No more yelling. No more pleading. Just gone. I stepped into the crisp night air. The snow had started falling again. Soft, silent, unbothered by the storm inside. Back in my car, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even feel bitter. I felt light. Because for the first time in years, I was free. 3 days after that Christmas dinner, Claire reached out. "Dad, they're furious. Evan says you've ruined us. But I just want you to know, thank you." She'd been the only one who never demanded, never mocked, never betrayed. And now, she was the one left standing. Not because I chose her, but because she chose decency when it mattered. I sent her a final envelope. Inside wasn't money, but something more permanent, the deed to the cabin up north. It was never listed with the lawyers, never tied to the estate, never mentioned in the documents, just something I'd kept, waiting for the right moment. That cabin had always been our place, hers and mine, before the rest poisoned everything. The letter that came with it said only this: "Build something better, Claire. Something they can't touch." And she did. She left the house, left the drama, left the guilt, started her own life, from scratch, in peace. As for the rest, they tried to contest the transfers. Evan hired 3 lawyers. Emily went to social media to smear me. But the story never caught traction. People don't rally behind spoiled brats who threw out their father on Christmas. Eventually, they went silent. Maybe from shame, maybe from fear, or maybe because, deep down, they knew they'd lost the only person who ever truly gave a damn. I don't need revenge anymore. What I have is better. Distance, peace, legacy. And every so often, when the snow falls just right, I get a letter from Claire. She tells me the lake is beautiful, that she's renovating the cabin, that she still wears the necklace I gave her when she turned 18. She signs every letter the same way. "Thank you for never giving up on me." Sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. It's knowing you chose integrity when others chose greed. It's watching those who mocked you collapse under the weight of their own choices, while you walk away, unshaken. Because justice, real justice, isn't about getting even. Real justice, it's about getting free. What would you have done in his place? Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you believe justice always finds a way.